every time you interact with another person, you're either going to get one of two responses, a cry for help or a loving response.
They can observe and yes, see your needs, but sometimes they just don't. And so that's where you having the courage to step forward as someone and feels that way, expressing that can make a whole difference in your relationship. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to the Conscious Couples podcast. This is episode number 24. We are a-rolling. I think I say that every time, honestly.
A-rolling.
So this episode is going to be, does your partner have your back? And as you know, we are taking you on a journey on the Conscious Couples podcast where we're trying to help everyone with the very things that we're currently practicing. And so we have a story to share with you that actually happened right before recording this episode, which is really, really cool, and several other stories as well. But does your partner have your back? Do you feel like your partner has your back? And if you're single, think back to your past relationships so that you can learn from those experiences and bring this into your next relationship. You will not be single forever. Love is out there for you. Before we jump into this episode, we also want to give a shout out to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show. They have produced all 24 of the episodes, YouTube, audio, the whole nine. Thank you so much, Aaron, Kevin, Ron. Thank you, NLPS team. As always, love. Ladies first.
Thanks, love. All right. So does your partner have your back? So you know if they do or don't. I'll just start out right there because I think that oftentimes we end up kind of telling ourselves a different story and I don't want to make anyone at fault here for that, but bear with me as we get into the story. So right before we usually podcast, Alan and I try to reduce the amount of variables that have going on. So for example, one of our biggest variables in our household is Tucker, who is our 8-pound Chihuahua. I'm telling it how it actually is instead of 4 pounds.
Pomchi.
Yeah, he's a little Pomchi. He's super cute. And he can definitely be the best guard dog ever, even if a leaf were to drop on the ground. And so while we love him for that, when we're trying to reduce the variables and have a nice, like, quiet background, if there's some barking in the background, someone probably might have, a little bit of a distraction moment. So before we get into podcasting, what we try to do is we put him down in what we call the den, which is his own little cute little like crate that has like soft blankets, and we put on peaceful piano for him. He's got the full 9. And honestly, it is like every person's dream to just be snuggled up and get to sleep more. So you think that it would be like something really exciting for him. But every single time, and it now more than ever, and as a matter of fact, like Alan said just before this, it actually turned into not like a, yay, I want to go in the crate into the den. It was more of like the kind of FU stage of, mom, not going to happen. We're going to go and hide underneath the couch. And so recently, that's happened a couple times. And one of the moments that Alan and I shared, actually a couple nights ago when we had to do some work, Tucker needed to go in the den. And the only way to get him out was with, a treat.
Oh, yeah.
And so now Tucker, little Tucker, smart little thing, he now associates with den with treat. Only if there is a treat in mom and dad's hand, when they say that word, will he come out from underneath the couch. And so right before we get into this podcast, I said, Tucker, let's go in the den, forgetting that this has been like my many months of conditioning for him to get excited to go in the den and everything has completely been wiped away with a couple of times, which, that's been challenging, but it's okay. It happens. And So what do I do in that moment when we know we're on a time crunch? Alan has a training. We need to get this podcast out there, right? I'm like, oh my God, we can't do this right now. Tucka, I want to be sweet and kind, but we need results. And so I'm trying to get him out from underneath the couch, getting my short little stubby arms underneath the couch. Doesn't really work out. And my tolerance starts to like boil a little bit. So I know everyone's been there where you kind of just want to get something done and it starts to frustrate you. It starts to boil up inside of you. And then there's kind of like a boiling point where you either suppress it and don't ask for help, or you can express it and ask for help. So when it comes to this moment for me, what did I do, babe?
So Tucker plays this new game, as you know, of hiding under the couch. Mom's trying to get him to the den, and we have a podcast to record. Mm-hmm. And to her point, what she had said, I have a training after this that I need to prep for as well. I've got most of it prepped, but so we're under a time crunch. So what Tucker did is he hid under there, and you basically said, "Babe, I need help." And yeah, so I was up in my office and I could hear this, and I could hear the whole thing happening because he runs around on the rugs. You can kind of hear it. So he was, he thinks it's a game.
Yeah,
he thinks it's a game. He's adorable. And so he's hiding under there thinking it's a game. I'm going to hang out with mom and dad and we're going to play the game of come get me over from under the couch.
Yep.
And so you did, we often say on this podcast, I think I said it before, and I heard this from Tony Robbins, every time you interact with another person, you're either going to get one of two responses, a cry for help or a loving response. And so I heard your literal cry for help, which was, "Babe, I need help." And so immediately I was setting up for the podcast, getting my computer in here, Audacity, which is an audio program we run. And I immediately shifted gears and just came down to help you.
Thank goodness.
Of course, honey, of course. And so what Emilia had done is grab something that, I don't know what that thing is called.
It's a bamboo stick that I just got in for gardening. So It's like 4 foot long bamboo stick. Yeah. And I'm like putting it underneath the couch to kind of like
entice him to come
out.
Yeah. It is not a whipping stick. Everyone relax. We did not hit Tucker with the stick.
My arms are only so long.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're an extension of my arms.
And we have a very long couch. I think it's like a 12-foot couch.
Yeah, it's big.
And so he came out and we solved the problem. But essentially the purpose of the story is I knew and was aware enough to shift my energy in that moment to come and support you and to come and help you. And that's a tiny moment.
Tiny.
But as we know from this podcast, it's the little things that stack up and that add up. And it's interesting too, because prior to even talking about this and you using this as an example in this episode, I thought nothing of that. So I wonder how many other moments I'm supporting you.
So many.
It feels so natural for me to do that. But I guess in a weird way, you can't really be grateful for something unless you know what the opposite is. And, I'm sure you've had partners in the past that were not super attuned or in tune with your needs for things like that. And so I'm grateful. It's a great story.
I'm grateful too, because ultimately why we share this story is because, again, circling back to, does your partner have your back? Like I said at the very beginning, you intuitively know whether or not they do and to what capacity. If you're a conscious couple or a conscious single clicking into this episode or watching this, you feel heard to some degree, right? Because the challenge isn't necessarily trying to figure out whether or not your partner has your back. It more comes in that moment where you can express your needs and feel confident in your partner's ability to meet your needs. So...
And what if I had, and this is the interesting study here, what if I had ignored that completely? You're going to start losing faith that I'm going to be there for you.
Yeah.
If I can't be there for you in the little things, what are the chances I'm going to be there for you in the big things? So I can understand why someone's trust in your partner or feeling of support could erode over time. Remember, everything is either building or decaying at all times.
Yeah.
Your trust in your relationship, whether or not you feel like they have your back or vice versa, and this is a two-way street too. So if you're listening to this with your partner, you guys can discuss this and like, do you feel like I have your back? Is there ever a time when you felt like I didn't have your back? These are beautiful discussions to have. I have a client, I'll keep this anonymous, of course, always, but I had a client a long time ago. It was probably like a year and 2 months ago or so, because I know we started relationship talks about a year and a half ago.
Yep.
So Emilia and I have been doing relationship talks coaching for a year and a half now, and we used to do them every single week, never miss. And that was before the podcast. That was the very first thing we started doing, is just jumping on the phone, talking relationships with people who were struggling in their intimate relationships, singles and couples. Awesome.
Shout out to you, love.
Oh, thank you, sweetie. It's big things start small. It's very cool.
You're
very
the best
cool.
at it.
Oh, you're sweet, honey.
My
You're
guy.
sweet. Very sweet. So I had a client back then who's like, I would love to do that. And this is a business client of mine, because I also do business coaching as well. And I would love to do that. I want to do that. I want to come to your next Relationship Talks event. This was like one of the first ones. I think it was the third or something. She's like, and I quote, "Oh, my husband would never do that." And I had a conversation with her of like, why? Why would your husband never do that? And let's get vulnerable here for a second. Like, do you feel like he has your back? Obviously not. If you want to go do these things, hammering the mic here. If you want to go do these things and you want to try this, we would love to have you.
Yeah.
But obviously there's a disconnect here.
Yeah.
And you obviously don't feel like your husband has your back fully. If you did, you'd have confidence that he would, be courageous and vulnerable and do this. And I understand too. So I want to share, this person didn't know us. Obviously the client knew me well.
Right.
And knew you fairly well.
Yep.
But the husband didn't know us yet, right? And they did come around, and so I want to share that as well. So my client ended up going on a trip in the mountains, and I'll keep this whole thing anonymous, but they talked about it. And she had the courage to bring up to her husband this concern about how she felt like she couldn't rely on him to try these new things with her on this growth journey.
Yeah.
And after that, let's just say that we met this person, and it all has been really magnificent since then.
Come check out the Relationship Talks from the Conscious Couples podcast. What's different about these relationship talks is the depth that Alan and Emilia get into when they're talking about the different problems. So for example, one of the ones we did was how to bounce back from a conflict. But it wasn't sort of your typical, here's, what you did wrong, and here's what you did wrong, and here's how you can talk about it and resolve it. Alan and Emilia went deeper and said, hey, let's explore how conflicts happen. Let's explore your communication styles. Let's see what happens when you react under stress and how you communicate with your partner. If there's a disconnect there, there's going to be conflict, and then we can start to resolve it. It's such a great and refreshing way to understand those problems and better understand myself. It's helped me grow as a person, and it's helped my relationship with my partner. I'm so grateful that I'm able to plug into this free community and just connect whenever I can and learn from these two spectacular human beings. I highly, highly encourage that you check it out and dive into everything that they do, because it's great. Take care. Bye.
But that's a really good story to articulate what it's like to have this aspiration, or to have this goal, or to want to do this thing or try this thing, big or small, and to not feel like your partner has your back. And it's not just them having your back when you have a goal, but also when something goes wrong. Those are really the two scenarios. If something goes wrong, like for example, Tucker hiding under the couch, it's a small thing, but do I have your back?
Right.
But also, what if you came to me and said, hey, babe, I really want to try this new course. It's a couples course, and I want to take it. Would you be willing? I'd be game.
Right.
And you would have faith that I'd be game.
Right.
This other business client at the time had so little belief in her partner having her back that she didn't even want to bring it up.
Oh.
And I know I've been there in the past as well, and I'm sure you have as well. And so I don't want to villainize her partner. What I do want to do here is have other people who are listening to this show or watching this show self-identify as, you know what, honestly, I don't think my partner has my back. And these are the three options. I talked about this a little bit in the last episode. And I've been saying this a lot on the NLU podcast as well, because it's really such important. A thing. It's a good framework.
Yeah.
You can either lead, you can leave, or you can appease. So in any relationship at any time, I don't care if it's intimate, friendship, business partnership, you can lead courageously, vulnerably. You can leave, that's a choice too, or you can appease, which is stay stuck and remain the same.
Right.
So luckily my client decided to lead and have the courageous conversation. They were in the mountains and they talked about it. They were camping.
Yeah.
And they came home and off to the races. And things have gotten magnificent for them since then, which is really cool.
Right.
And so the ripple effect of these things can really be powerful. So if you're out there listening or watching and you identified with any of this, are you going to lead, have the courage and the vulnerability to have the conversation? Are you going to leave the relationship, like this isn't going to work, you obviously don't have my back? Or are you going to appease and just sit back and remain the same? Because this problem is not going to get better, it's going to get worse. When you let things rot and sit there, they rot, whether it's a home or a relationship or whatever. The car depreciates over time. The home depreciates over time. The relationship depreciates over time unless you work on it. And so that's what we want to encourage you to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And shout out to that client and for you to give her the courage, because I know that sometimes courage can be borrowed from our coaches. And I think that that's a really huge thing. But it is really comes down to, I've seen so many people gaslight themselves, meaning convince themselves of a story that like, oh, I feel that my partner doesn't have my back, but like, that's just kind of how it is. Like, and accepts so much lower and tolerate so much lower than their own standard, or to put it in a different case of words, like what they want, what their needs are. Right. And if you look at your partnership and you say like, my needs just aren't supported by my partner, right? That's a courageous moment to look in the mirror and actually admit that. Not to mention step outside of that admittance and say to your partner whom you care about and want to see them come with you once you express that and say, listen, I really want us to be a team in this. I really want you to have my back in this, because what if they don't want to step up, and what if they don't want to meet your needs? Then what? And that fear, I find, holds so many people back from even breaching the subject, because what if my partner doesn't know how to meet my needs? What if, and there's a part of us that can sometimes catastrophize and think of the worst case scenario. But I think the what if and that little sliver of hope, that what if they actually do want to step forward, and what if they just don't know that you feel that way? We're not mind readers. People aren't mind readers. They can observe and yes, see your needs, but sometimes they just don't. And so that's where you having the courage to step forward as someone and feels that way, expressing that can make a whole difference in your relationship.
There's one story in particular, and Emilia and I were talking prior to this episode about, because I want to ask questions like, is there ever a time where you didn't feel like I had your back? And there is one story that popped up, and it was a specific time, and we're not going to go into it in this episode, but I want to know those things.
Yeah.
Because if I am not aware that you felt unsupported, or I didn't have your back in that moment, timer just went off, so we got to go. But if you feel like I didn't have your back in that moment, and I just keep brushing that under the rug, or you do the same,
right?
How am I ever going to know?
Right.
How am I ever supposed to improve? So remember the growth mindset episode. If you haven't listened to it, I forget which one. I want to say 19 or 20. But if your partner does not have a growth mindset, aka they believe that they can improve with feedback, even if it's constructive or quote unquote negative feedback. Emilia told me one time that she felt very unsupported in one particular instance. This is the only one I can really think of. And it was a tough one, really tough
So
mirror. You
scary.
came to me crying, bringing that to me, and you felt like I didn't have your back.
Yeah.
And I will never let that happen again. And I'm so grateful that you felt like you could express your truth, and just remember, the suppression of self-expression leads to depression or eventually explosion. And if you suppress your truth, if you suppress yourself, if you are not the fully expressed, authentic version of yourself, you're not going to flourish in your relationship anyway. No. It's going to end eventually anyway, unless you stay a shell of your former self, which no one wants to do.
But a lot of people become a shell of themselves in relationships. And that's what we want to help you avoid.
That's the purpose of this podcast, the Conscious Couples Podcast, is to make sure that you're not suppressing yourself and that you and your partner are creating a relationship where you feel mutually expressed And that's really the goal. And it's courage, it's vulnerability, it's great communication, it's trust, it's all of these fundamentals that we're teaching you. So that's the last thing I wanted to say basically is just, if you feel like you've identified with, you know what, honestly, I don't know if my partner has my back in this.
Yeah.
Maybe they have your back in most things, but maybe they don't have your back in this one area.
Right.
Bring that to the table. And you can even say, listen, you have been so supportive, X, Y, Z. Thank you so much. There's this one area, though, that I just didn't feel like you had my back.
Yeah.
And if you lead with the good, I bet you the conversation goes better than you think.
For sure. Yeah. Understanding your needs, expressing them to yourself so that then you can express them to your partner. Do that in a way that's from an effective place. Like you just said, that's a great way to do it. So I want to invite every single one of our listeners into our Relationship Talks community, but specifically every single Saturday, we have a half hour dedicated to our community. So book that on our calendars. The link is in the show notes. What we do is we sit down, complete judgment-free zone. It's not recorded. It's just simply virtual, where you get to meet Alan and I. And if you are struggling with something like this, you know, and you're trying to figure out what might be the right word choice to share with my partner, given this X, Y, and Z tendency, we can help you by the end of that call craft together a specific script, if you will, or authentic, effective communication towards your partner that can really help. And so those are free, completely not recorded. And really, we're hoping that you leverage that, because we've really changed some lives in that, and we hope to change yours.
Totally private. Just remember that you coming to us and expressing these things, something good is going to come of it. Something good always comes of it.
Always does.
Such a beautiful thing. So we have, as you know, something called Relationship Talks monthly events every single month. All the months, 12 months a year.
All of them.
So many months. I'm just joking. But our next RT event is in August. It is on August 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's called Building Your Future as a Team. I'm super pumped about this one, and here's why. We hear about vision boards all the time, right? Vision board this, vision board that. Yeah. Okay. What about the we board?
Woo!
You see what I'm saying? The we board. Imagine a vision board for you and your partner. So you're a conscious, I know.
Get out.
I know. You're a conscious couple. It's time to have conscious goals together.
I like.
So we're going to help you create a we board, just like we are going to create one as well. We kind of have already, but we're going to be creating a new evolved version of what we created a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago now, I think. But yeah, so if you want to create a we board with your partner, if you're single, come and create a regular vision board. Totally fine.
Okay.
Put your dream partner on the vision board.
There you go.
I have several people on the NLU team and clients who have created vision boards,
Got it.
their phone background and their desktop background. Subconscious mind's very powerful.
Huge.
You gotta have a vision board on your phone and your desktop background. My desktop background is a quote by Steve Jobs, and my background on my phone as well. That's all for a reason.
Yeah.
Join us August 11th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, RT event, Building Your Future as a Team. And as always, it's not about me or you. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is a Lazaros 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.